So this is just an update to a previous post that I made about how you can deform the cheek of your character into a nice horizontal line that's perpendicular to the eyelid. The previous method that I showed off was a little bit overcomplicated and didn't get exactly the results that I needed. So this is an updated system that's a lot simpler and gets you better results. So I can show you what it looks like in action. So if I take all three controls up or down, it's a nice smooth rotation around the eye to lift the cheek up and make this line horizontal. And then when I take each individual control, you have a nice fall off in between them, and they all have a nice bell curve shape to the deformation they make. And then we also have left and right motion in here that has the same nice smooth fall off between the controls. So let me step under the hood and I'll show you what's going on in the node editor to create this effect. So this rig is actually just made up of those three controls and 4 joints. One joint I just have here because it holds the weight for the rest of the skin that isn't affected by these 3 controls. And then I have 3 joints named upper cheek, inner, mid, and outer that are all located at the center of the eyeball. Those 3 joints are being driven by the 3 controls through this node network. So what I have going on is I have the translation Y going to this node, and I'm dividing it by 0.09, which just happens to be the distance I would want to take that control visually to go from its starting position up to in line with the eyelid. So that value can be whatever you want it to be, and it can be different for all 3 controls. This is basically the value that you want for the controls that's going to be associated with the full deformation of the cheek area. Then what I have that the outputs from that node going into is another multiply divide node where I multiplied those values by the angle of rotation that I want to occur on the joints when the cheek has 100% deformation. And so that's going into the rotate X of those individual joints. So you can see that in action if I have the 3 controls at 3 different heights. You can see that the 3 joints have 3 different rotations along their X-axis. Then I have the same thing going on down here where I have the translate X for the 3 controls going into another multiply divide node and a multiply divide node over here to multiply the output by whatever the rotation would be for the individual joints. So for example, if I were to take this to the right, 0.9, this is going to output 1 because it's 0.9 divided by 0.9. 0.09. And then I'm multiplying that value of 1 by 45 degrees. So when I take this over to the side, it has rotated the joint 45 degrees. So once again, you can set those values to be whatever you want, but you do want to set them before you actually start painting weights. And painting weights is the most important part of this setup. So let me jump into NG Skin Tools and I'll show you what's going on. So what I have is I have a filler layer where just the entire skin is assigned to that filler joint. Then I have a second layer where I have the entire mesh assigned to those 3 joints, and I've just created some nice smooth fall off in between them. And I'm not worried about this upper lid because it's not going to be affected. I'm just worried about how the fall off in between the red, white, and the blue looks on this lower lid. You can see that it is nice and smooth. Then, on the layer above, well, sorry, the mask for the layer is where I actually start painting the weights. So for example, if I were to bring all 3 of these up, even if I had 100% weight assigned to this center joint, these 2 controls would no longer do anything because there's no weight assigned to their joints. But the deformation is still going to look the same overall. What we're painting on this layer mask is just the deformation that we want these three joints to add up to create, and then we're splitting that deformation up by painting individual weights onto the individual joints underneath that layer mask. So this only works if you're actually directly plugging in rotation values into the joints at the center of the eye. If you use a aim constraint, then you're not going to get the exact same results, because what you need is for all three joints to have the same transformation occur at your kind of one value for the cheek deformation.